Hello, viewers. Welcome to another episode from Anything About Everything. Today, I have Kavia with me, who's extensively into cybersecurity, and it's October, the month of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So it's the perfect time to have Kavia on the show. Welcome to the show, Kavia.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you for having me. And some context for you on Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So, how it started was, I think, in 2004, the Homeland Security and Cybersecurity Alliance came together and started putting together content to educate people about cyber risk. So, started with more lightweight topics like how do you make sure you have a strong password and educating the community to be more vigilant in the cyberspace because today everything is digitized and we live in a very digital world, so it's important for folks to be aware, and that over the years transformed. And now we have deeper topics that we talk about with AI, machine learning. They're more sophisticated attacks and more prevalent attacks that people need to be able to work through. And this month is focused in educating them and helping folks stay safe.
Awesome. The thing about when you talk about educating is I always when you talk about hacking or anything, I am always reminded of that spam calls. What do you get? Do they educate about that as well in the cybersecurity month?
Yes, so I think it started with that. It
Oh, it started
started
with that.
with education of phishing
Mm.
emails, spam calls, making sure you don't share your password. And then it's evolved over the years where people talk about multi factor authentication and why it's important to have multi factor authentication. Now, this year, you'll see a lot more themes around artificial intelligence. Speaking of spam calls, with AI, those calls have become more sophisticated. Before, you could identify a spam call by listening to it, but now with AI models trained to talk to you, it's really hard for someone to be able to understand and make sure they're talking to a real person and not a robot. We are lucky because we're in the technology space, right? We get to see all of this every day, but not everyone does. Even I have been a victim of spam calls, even though I'm a cybersecurity professional. I've been in the cyberspace for almost a decade. And very recently, I was almost phished. I was trying to get my internet connection stood up, and I was talking to who I believed was a Comcast agent, but actually it was a phishing call where they were collecting my information, and they were trying to get my credit card information, and I didn't even realize because all I wanted that day was my internet connection stood up. So it can happen to anybody. Even though I'm in the cyberspace, I was a victim to it, and hence it's important to be able to look at that information. A lot of people ignore it. Like I don't know if you knew about cybersecurity awareness until I told you, right? So a lot of people ignore it, but I think the more we educate people, we're going to build a more aware society.
Got it. And you being in the cybersecurity like industry, like I think you're the right person to ask this. What exactly cyber? Say I don't know anything about cybersecurity. Is it just hacking? Like that's what cybersecurity is?
So the simple way of putting it, and I would tweak it depending on whom I'm talking to, right? Um, when you live in a house, you have a door with a lock, right? When you go to the club, you have a bouncer standing outside who checks your ID, right? And what you see is folks validating that the right people are entering the house or the club, right?
Mhm.
And when you think about the digital space, you don't have a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Cybersecurity helps you do that. So think of them as the bouncers, think of them as the door lock, think of them as um, opportunities to protect yourself in a digital world where it's not physically something you can visualize and protect against.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Have you always wanted to get into cybersecurity?
The reason I was introduced into the cyberspace was honestly because I really needed a job and I was looking actively, and I found this one opportunity which opened doors into the cyberspace. And all of that happened because people were willing to trust me. They knew I did not have the experience in cyber, but they trusted that I would be willing to learn and grow in that area. So when I joined a cyber team the very first time, I didn't know anything about cyber. I literally learned it as an immersive experience through that year on that team.
Oh wow. So it was like real time,
Yeah.
straight up.
Yep. So I didn't go to school for it. I didn't really have the ability to prepare for it. I was thrown right into the deep end and I had to swim. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what happened to me in the cyberspace. And with that, I think I got to learn real time to line with the business needs. But more importantly, I think after that, I went to school. So what helped was it helped tie all of these things I was seeing in reality to why it really mattered. And I feel like that really helped because a lot of people first go to school and then they try to apply it. Mine was
Right.
a reverse education where I was thrown into the water and then I realized, oh, this is how I would probably be able to survive in that water, right? And I was able to apply my learnings in a more meaningful way. Another funny story I had to tell you, and I don't know if you know, I spent a lot of time in school. I've gone back and done a couple of courses and programs. And I feel like that's been an important factor in me realizing the importance of having real life experience. Because when I graduated from school, I remember back in the day, I was like, oh, now that I've graduated with a technical degree, next stop, I'm going to do an MBA. And most MBA programs require you to have 2 years experience, right? And I was like, oh, I don't want to work for 2 years. I want to just go straight and do my MBA. It's very important to do that because that gives you the ability to apply what you learn in your course and make sense of it. Because if you're just in school, you have only one perspective. But when you're in real world, the situations are different, the dynamics are different, the problems you're solving are different, and you learn how to apply what you're learning in a more effective way.
Hmm. That's a good point. I mean, for me, like I've always thought about um, education as important, but not as like integral part of like doing anything. So yeah, it's an interesting topic that you bring up. Like when you work and then you go back to study, you make more sense of it. You get the real time experience and you understand why you're doing what you're doing. Interesting. This is my favorite question. I ask this in every episode. How does AI impact cybersecurity, and how does AI impact uh, careers in cybersecurity?
The reason I'm laughing is AI, machine learning, they're like the new buzzwords that you see everywhere. Every conference I go to is AI enabled in many ways, right? And honestly, it's a double edged sword for the society, right? You're going to see a lot of new innovations in that space, but you'll also have to protect yourself from a lot of threats in the landscape. And pretty much a cat and mouse game, right? We're going to have to have stronger ways to protect ourselves in the cyberspace. We'll have more efficient, innovative solutions, but we'll also have more sophisticated attacks. One of the things that I was reading is just in 2023, there was a 83% increase in automated phishing attacks because now impersonation is so much more easier with deep fakes and things like that, right? Which means that for cyber, we need to be able to build technology that can protect people in the community against some of these, right? And if it's just starting and we're seeing that 83% upheaval, we're going to see a lot more of that.
Hmm.
So yes, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for a lot of folks. It's probably going to create new streams within the cyberspace, a lot of new career roadmaps for sure. But it also means that we will need to educate people more actively of the potential threats you're going to see.
Got it. What is the roadmap that you would give for someone who wants to start their career in cybersecurity?
Great question. So the way I would think about it is what excites you about cyber? Cyber is a huge landscape. There are a lot of different things you can focus on, right? Uh, it's important to write it down. Try to think through what are the areas that make you feel like you want to learn more about. Because one thing in cyber is you're constantly learning. There's always something new, there's always new technology. There's things that you will always not know. And to be successful, I think one of the things most people need to think about is you're never going to have all the answers and you'll have to figure it out, right? So if you're starting a career in the cyber, first, I would look at potential internships. LinkedIn is a great resource for that. So you can look at internships and what folks are looking for in the cyberspace. There are a lot of online resources and training that you can use, whether it's Udemy, Coursera. There are a lot of companies such as the Fangs that have programs set up that are free for you. A lot of folks do not know that. An exciting one for me, just because I worked in this space, is the Bug Bounty program. The Bug Bounty program has training available for individuals who don't really have to have a particular skill set. It's open to all, it's open source. So anybody can sign up, learn, submit bugs and their findings. And the most interesting part about that is you will get monetary benefits from these companies for reporting these bugs. And the best thing about this is it's just not the monetary gain, it's also the feel good factor that you're doing something good. A lot of people associate hacking with being a negative terminology, but you can also hack for good to make the community a better place. And I feel like that's a great starting point if you want to explore opportunities in cyber and see if that's something you're interested in and grow in that area.
Got it. How important is coding for cybersecurity?
Well, it's definitely a plus, but it is not a factor that will limit you. Just from my background, you know that I'm not a coder. And one of the things that I often laugh about is when the recruiter from Google reached out to me and asked me to interview at Google. I said, "Hey, why are you reaching out to me? Because I'm not a coder. I can't code." And she said, "Well, there are other opportunities in the cyberspace, and life has come full circle. I'm sharing that with you today, where it's important to realize that it's nice to have. You can be successful in some areas within cyber if you're a coder, but there are so many different perspectives in cyber that you can work on that is not related or dependent on coding."
Got it. How's like for everyone working in Google is a big thing, including me. Like I wanted to, but I don't know if I want to anymore. I'm happy with my job where I am. I love people who I work with. So how is it? I think there's two questions to this, like two parts to this question. First thing is, how was your interview process with Google? We'll start with there, and then I'll tell you the second part of the question. I want to know how was the interview process.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, and like you said, right, a lot of folks feel like they want to do it, but they're reluctant to do it because it feels like it's this big monster in the room. And I was one of those, right? I never ever anticipated that I would work at Google because I was not a computer science major. When the recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn, I was surprised and shocked. And I think there was a little bit of excitement where I was like, hey, yeah, someone's interested in what I have to offer. But I was more scared that someone was trying to spam me, right? So I didn't want to be in a situation where I'm getting excited about something, but it was a scam reach out. So I did my due diligence. The cyber person and me went did some research. I was like, yeah, this is really a Google recruiter, and this person really wants to talk to me. So I went ahead and had that conversation. And I think the most important thing that a lot of us forget is we're always so prepared for everything in our life that we forget to bring our most authentic self. And when I was doing this interview, because I didn't know what was in store for me, I was honest, right? I went into the interview and I said, hey, I don't know the code. I don't know why you're reaching out to me. I think you got the wrong person. And she explained to me that there's so many different opportunities and I should give it a shot and see where it takes me. And I think I've shared this with you before, but I was so embarrassed of this person reaching out to me. And honestly, I should have been very proud and happy and shared it with my people. But I was so embarrassed because I thought I wasn't ready for it, right? I had this huge imposter syndrome where I was like, people are going to judge me to think I could even get a job at Google. So I'm like, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm going to do this under wraps. Let's see how it works out for me. So I went ahead and did the interview, did a couple of technical interviews, spoke to multiple people. And I will say that I won't say they were hard, but most of the questions they asked me, I felt like could have gone anyway. There's no right answer to it. And that's, I think, with most interviews. There's never a right answer. It's how you think through the problem solving. right? And I didn't think I did well. I felt like I'd blown the interview for sure. And then I would get through every round, and I still felt like I wasn't ready for it till I got to the last round. And when I went to the last round, it's called the on-site interview. We had to speak to five Google employees across five principals within Google, and they touch on different topics, right? It's a holistic assessment of how you show up in that organization. And I think the best piece I liked is they also had one interview where they do a fit check to see if you would work well with the people on your team, right? It's not just about your skill set, it's not just about your education, but it's also about being able to work with the team, because you need to find your people to be able to thrive, right? And all of this took a good 6 7 months, and it was extremely intensive but well worth it. I feel like it helped me identify things about myself that I didn't know. And after I got through the interviews, every round I would feel like, okay, they're going to knock me off this round. They're going to knock me off in the next round, right? And then towards the end of it, I got through all the interviews. I was like, wow, I got through all of it. This is awesome. She called me and she said, hey, you gotten through your on-site. I was like, fantastic, I got the job. And she's like, oh, no, not just yet. We're kidding. You have to go through an approval process. And then I started reading up on Reddit and all of these different sources about the approval process. And what I read through those sources was essentially you present it to a board at Google, and you have a senior vice president who will review your resume and approve or not approve your case. And if you don't get approved, then you don't get the job, even though you nailed the on site interview. Wow. So it's extremely important to get through that round. Based on Reddit, most of the folks fall off on that in that round, right? And it's like a 30 to 40% selection. So if you have 10 resumes being presented, 3 or 4 resumes get selected. So it is really hard for you to be able to get through that, is what I read. And after they called in and told me I had gotten through that and I was up for the next round, they do a team match, which I think was my favorite part of the interview process, because a lot of opportunities that we take on, we have a specific role that we're applying for. But the way Google hires is they're looking to onboard you to the company rather than a specific role, right? So what that means is there's so many different teams and there's so many different job profiles, and they let you meet the team and you select each other. So if you like a team, you pick that team, and then the team checks you out and says, hey, do I want to be with this person? Very much like an arranged marriage. And if you can walk away and go to another team, I like that flexibility, because you really get to choose which area you want to work in within Google, because it's a huge organization. So you're choosing the the opportunity where you feel you can be most impactful. Got it. And when when the Google HR reached out to you, was it based on your LinkedIn? Was it based on your resume? Did you apply to them? So she reached out to me on LinkedIn, which makes me believe it is through LinkedIn. But I would think they have some sort of algorithm that they follow to be able to identify candidates. And one of the things that the recruiter shared with me was they found that my career trajectory was very interesting. So I was not someone who had everything figured out. I've taken different paths in my life. So if you look back, I started with a engineering degree in biotechnology. And then I went ahead and did a master's in management and innovation in the UK, shifted gears again, came into the US, did a degree in information communication and technology, majored in project management, and ended up working in the cyberspace. So I had a little bit of everything, but it didn't add up. Like if you were someone who was looking at my profile, you'd be like, this person's been everywhere. All over the place. Right. And does this person even know what they're doing at this point? Right. And funnily, they thought that was a skill set. They said, hey, we see you thriving. You've done so many different things, and we love to see people like this. And that, in most cases, which I thought was a bane for me ended up being my booth and got me a seat at Google, right? So I think a lot of times in life, we feel like we need to have everything figured out and you need to know the exact roadmap to get there. But there could be opportunities that open up much later, even though you've not perfected that roadmap exercise.
True. And working in like these big name tech firms and experience that you had, again, it might be coming out of complete no knowledge about that side. I want to know firsthand with all these like people talking about DEI, like is women really underrepresented in tech industry?
Absolutely. Women are underrepresented everywhere uh, in the workspace, not just in technology. It's construction, it's any workspace. And I think things are changing, right? Technology, for one, I think there's a 25% representation of women. We've come a long way over the last couple of years because of some fantastic women who've done great work, like Indra Nooyi, Susan, right? Like we've had fantastic women who've championed other women and helped make a space for women to thrive. But we have a long way to go, right? And I think the most important piece that I have seen is diverse teams are definitely more productive and bring more creative problem solving capabilities. I was reading somewhere that a team that's diverse performs like 35 to 50% better than a team that's less diverse.
Mm.
Right. And it also helps from a perspective that when you solve for a problem, you don't think about it only in one way. You think about it in different ways. So I definitely feel like there have to be more opportunities for women and it also have a lot more women educated in that space of the opportunities available to them. I think in the cyberspace we've been fortunate with communities like women in cybersecurity, the VSIS community. They do a lot of training for women, whether it's um, younger women looking in to get into cyber or it's women who've moved away from their careers to come back into the workplace. They do a lot of things to encourage women to learn skill set, tie them into networking opportunities, to connect with these companies, to find the right opportunity for them. And I think we need to do a lot more of those.
What is your piece of advice for someone who's starting in cybersecurity? And do you have any roadmap for them, what they should do? Or if you started all over, knowing what you know, what would you advise?
Yeah. Sometimes I joke that I didn't have the awareness when I even picked the courses I picked, right? Because one, I feel like I didn't look in the right places, right? But I also feel like being able to share more actively, trying to join communities where you can talk to people who do the day to day job. Like, I will tell you the reason I got into biotechnology is because I used to see Kiran Mazumdar Shaw on TV or on the newspaper, right? I didn't know anything about biotechnology. I just thought it sounded great. It rings. So I took that on, right? But I feel like my career choices would be very different if I had the opportunity to talk to someone who could share more about what they do day to day, right? Being able to network with people, trying to understand what the day in the life looks like for you to make a decision. So try to connect with people, reach out. Like a lot of people, me for one, if anyone reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I just want to know about what your day looks like and I want to see if there are opportunities that I would like to do in the future," I would be happy to share. And there are many, not just women, there are many individuals out there who would be happy to share their experience, right? So being available and reaching out to folks is one. Second, do your research, right? You're not going to have it all figured out. Things are going to change, but write it down, do your research, try to find your interest areas. One of the strategies that I've used in my past life, and this is more for early career folks, and it's called Magic Trio. And what that is a lot of people, including me, get a job because, hey, I just need a job. I don't care what I'm going to be doing. I just need a job, right? But after you get that job, what next? A lot of folks don't think about it. They're like, I'm just going to do what I do because I like where I am, like you just shared. Like I like what I do, right?
Love what I do.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't put in the effort to think about what all they can bring to the table, right? You become complacent. You work really hard till you get your first job, and then you become complacent. So, the thing I recommend to a lot of people on my team is doing this exercise called the Magic Trio exercise. And what that means is, what do you love to do? Right? Because you worked for a bit, you know what you like, what you don't like. It's not as glamorous as it looked on TV. So you know, right? And then there is, what does the company need you to do? Like, what are you getting paid to do? And what do you like to do? And when you write all of these things down, you use some of the inspiration you get through that to build out an individual development plan. Whether you're a early career, mid career, accomplished everything, there's something for everybody, right? And you will only get that if you write it down. Mm. So I encourage everyone around me to intentionally put together an individual development plan, whether it is for you in your role in your job or it is your personal life. You don't have to keep them separate. You can pull them all together, because the goal of putting that together is, what is the best version of you want to see. Mm. To get the best of you. So I definitely would recommend for folks to do that. There are a lot of resources that you can use to make that happen. I'm happy to share that with you and the viewers so they can leverage that as well. Awesome. Um, would you mind sharing some success stories or your role models? How have they influenced your life in this industry and how you look up to them? Yep. I've been fortunate because I've had a lot of champions who've helped me work on myself and build on the imposter syndrome I have. And not a lot of people get that opportunity, I will say that. So I will start with the way I got into cyber was because of a person called Christine Vanderpool. And she also won the leader in cybersecurity this year. Um, and what she taught me was, one, know your self worth, build your brand, and keep your people close to you. And what she has done, and what I've really been inspired about her life, is she's built really strong teams because of the trust that she has in her people. And it's very hard for a cyber person to trust people because you're always pessimistic, right? There are also a lot of cybersecurity women, whether it's Camille Stewart, Susan, a lot of people who've done great work in technology space that are very inspiring for people who feel like they don't know where to start, right? Um, and I wouldn't limit it to just women. Um, I was in DEF CON this year, and I had the opportunity to attend a talk on a heist. And this was around a diamond heist that happened in Belgium. I don't know which year, but the person who presented it was Peter Stegmeyer, and his role is a heist specialist, right? I never knew you could build a career as a heist specialist. And the concept of being a heist specialist is basically ties to the principles of cyber on being able to threat model all the ways a attacker can attack a system. So that's another opportunity in cyber you didn't know. So I feel like I'm inspired every day by so many of these individuals taking on cyber in so many different perspectives, whether it's education. Tanya Janka, she's a champion who works through not just building security champions programs, but she's a great spokesperson. Like, I love her talks, and she educates people and focuses on building that strong community and really partnering closely with developers. So we've been fortunate to have these people who share their stories and work with them. One piece that I will mention, speaking of role models, is when I was at Black Hat. Black Hat is a very popular security conference, the world's largest security conference that happens in Las Vegas in August. I was invited to a ladies' lunch, and they got all the cybersecurity leaders, not all, but they selected a couple, right? And they got them to just have a conversation. It was my first, and I was a little nervous about doing it. But I was like, okay, I'm going to be in a room with all of these people who are so accomplished, and I might not have anything to share. And I think most people feel like that, right? You always feel like you don't have anything to share. And we had Alicia, who was the CISO of for Obama's time as president. She's now the CISO of Mastercard, and she was telling me that you will need to invest in making sure your voice is heard, however small or big your role is, right? If you're always going to be like, I'm not ready for it, you will never be ready for it. I had shared with her that I'm a young leader, I'm trying to figure out leadership as a woman, and I'm hoping I'll figure it out soon. And she said, it's not about figuring it out, it's about learning every day, right? It's not something you can figure out. You learn every day from your experiences. So just having these authentic conversations with these people and being able to have access to such a huge community of leaders, I think inspires me every day. So it's hard to say I have one role model. I feel like every time I meet someone in the space and learn about where they came from, what they did, and how they take on the challenges in the cyberspace, it excites me. So it's very hard for me to pick one person.
Awesome. I mean, I completely agree when you say that it's all about people and it's all about picking people who you surround yourself with. I completely agree with that too. For me, even when I started my career, I'm into the data side. The opportunity that I got to work with a startup company, I was their probably second employee or first employee. I think when I started, I've been with them forever. Having my experience with the CEO Dominic and the CTO Andrew, like it was amazing. Like the way they handled the crisis situation, the way they look at it, it was a learning curve every single day.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to work with such people and learn every single day,
Yep.
right? Is there any particular skill that one should need to thrive in cybersecurity?
Yes, the willingness to learn every day, right? As long as you're willing to learn constantly, I think you'll be successful in this space. For someone who's starting to look at opportunities in cyber, I would start with, obviously, there are the formal channels of doing a more formalized program in the cyberspace, but there are also so many courses and resources available that they can leverage. There are a bunch of certifications you could consider doing that help set you up. The SANS training is a great example. SANS is an institute that focuses on educating folks in the cyberspace, and they build out your whole learning map for you. So if it's someone who doesn't want to go to a standard master's program or a school setup, SANS will give you that training. And the best thing about their training, it ties into real life practices. You are working with um, folks who are tied into those specific roles in organizations, sharing their feedback of what they're seeing. So it's more real time. There are obviously other resources of interning in companies like I went. The minute you stop asking questions or you feel like you've figured it out, I think that's when it impacts a person from growing. So I encourage folks to try to connect with folks from a networking perspective, but also use the resources. We live in a world where data is unlimited, right? So leverage those resources. You don't have to go through a formalized program to be good at something. You can be great by learning something that interests you. Um, like bug bounty, or it could also just be educating folks about the risks associated with cyber, right? Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So many opportunities in that space.
For me, whenever again, I might be talking with a personal what do you call personal experience here. So when I was trying to learn coding with Python and everything, so there's this, like you said, unlimited amount of resources right now, especially in a snap of a finger. I felt like for a bit I got into this excuse my French, it's called knowledge bomb, where you just like keep going and learning, keep going and learning, keep going and learning, and then you're not applying anything. So how do you get out of that?
So one of the things that has helped me is leveraging the micro learning exercises. And what that means is because data is so vast and there's so much data everywhere, you get into this never ending cycle of constantly going through data. And sometimes the data by itself is not accurate, right? Because the internet is free, right? So there's a bunch of things that you're learning which doesn't tie up together.
Mhm.
And what has helped me is like problem solving micro learning. So I like try to look at a problem and try to learn for that problem specifically rather than just expand and say, hey, I want to learn about cyber. I'm going to learn everything about cyber, right? Instead, I would bite size it and say, hey, I want to learn about phishing, and within phishing, what is like a way I can protect myself? Like this is an example, but micro learning helps people to get more targeted results. We use that actually in the corporate world as well, especially for our developers. So developers write awesome code, but they hate security professionals because they feel like we're slowing them down. Right, and what security does is we go to them and we give them bunch of information of how to be secure and pages of data that they have to go through, and they're like, I don't have time for this, I want to code, I love coding, I want to code, right? But what happens with that is when they're coding, they are coding security vulnerabilities in the code that's putting people at risk, right? So what we are trying to do is give them specific training only for what they're building rather than teach them everything about security, because they're not going to be interested in that. They like to code. So, just as an example, without getting too technical for this audience, if you think about someone coding, they have a security flaw in their code. At that point, they only learn about that security flaw for 10 minutes. And they know enough to solve for that problem. That problem. Instead of teaching them everything about all the different security flaws. OWASP Top 10 is a great example, right? We get people to learn about cybersecurity through this medium called OWASP Top 10, which is open source again, that's built in for the community, but people don't have the bandwidth or energy to even go through the top 10. So really bite sizing it helps. And that has been extremely successful in making sure people are actually learning something, right? One of the things that I would encourage for you is try to keep your training very targeted and test yourself against it. Test it to solve a problem and see what you really learn from it.
Got it. No, thanks for the advice there. Going Taking a little segue from the cybersecurity world, for me, I feel like how much ever I work in data science, I need like something that's completely um I wouldn't say contradict, I'm not getting the right word here. Something that's away from data is like, what I do apart from that to have fun, to grow. So what are your interests other than cybersecurity? What do you do?
Yeah. So you asked me if I have hobbies.
Yeah.
Oh, the reason I'm laughing is because someone once asked me if I had any hobbies, and I said, no, I don't have time for hobbies. But I think what I've started doing more recently after I moved to the US was trying to look at things that excite me. So I'm not someone who can stick to something for too long. So the way I challenge myself is I try to learn something every time and I'm in a new place. So if I am in Colorado, I'll try to take a lesson in snowboarding. I'm not going to probably be an expert in it, but I'll do it, right? If I'm in um, horse capital, I learned to ride a horse. Try to do something very specific to the location I'm in and learn different things, because for me, it's all about having experiences. So it's hard for me to say if I have a hobby. I think my hobby is trying different things.
Awesome. Nice way
So
to put it. I also fall in the same line. I love trying new things, new experiences. You never know until you try it, right? Um, this question I also ask you guys. Uh, what is something that you always thought was true, or you always like someone told you that this is the way to do it, but over the period of time or through experience you figure out that wasn't. So is there any instance or any learnings like that that you had?
I won't say it was what someone told me. There's a lot of things that we think about. And someone once told me, you struggle more in your imagination than in reality, right? So, be it a job at Google or uh, be it like trying to find the perfect career for you, you feel like you have to do it a particular way or you
Mhm.
will not be successful, right? When I was younger, my parents would always tell me, try to do really well till you're in like college and then do whatever you want to do. And then when I got to college, they said, do very well in college and then you do whatever you
As
want to
soon
do.
as you get a job.
And then they said, oh, you know what? Just get a job and then you do whatever you want to do. And then they said, oh, you know what? Get married and then you do whatever you want to do. Right. So I think what I've come to realize is you don't have to go through all of these obstacles to do what you want to do.
Hmm.
You they help you make more reasonable choices, but they should not limit you from doing whatever you want to do. I feel like sometimes that I probably slowed myself down because I was trying to get through some of these barriers that were created, invisible barriers that don't really add up. Like I learned a bunch of calculus, which I'll probably never use in my life. Right? But it helped me. It helped me with my technical acumen in ways. But did I have to go through 4 years of calculus to do that? Maybe not, right? So I feel like a lot of these invisible barriers that get added into your life do impact some of the things you do and show up. So being I think that is something I feel like I would like to differently if I had to do this all over again. But what I have learned from that is it's important to think about what you have available to you and make the most of it at that moment, uh, rather than try to get through these invisible barriers that are created by you or someone else for you.
Incredible answer. I think those are the questions that I had for you. Do you have any last advice to the audience or myself?
Well, since it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I would like to share that I know a lot of folks hate the security items that folks make you do. I know a lot of folks hate the fact that it slows you down, but definitely leverage some of the technology that we have available, whether it's multi-factor authentication, whether it is the strong passwords to protect yourself, because the threat landscape is changing and it's not to scare anyone, but we want to make sure we build a more vigilant community that is able to get ahead of these hackers and stay safe.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kavya. Thank you for doing this. Like, definitely, I learned a lot from this. I'm sure, like, people, like the audience who stuck around, definitely they had a lot of things to take with them. And people who want to pursue their career in cybersecurity, you've dropped a lot of gems and helped them out. Thank you so much for doing this.
And thank you for having me and letting me experience my first podcast. I don't think I would have done it otherwise. So thank you.
It goes both the ways. Audience, thank you so much for sticking around. Stay tuned for another episode from Anything About Everything. Thanks.